These guys make up these stupid little rules, put them in the Federal Register as if they have authority to do so, and it technically, well, actually untechnically becomes law, but it's not legal. Tim Sundle's here again with a story you won't believe about your U.S. Forest Service employees that you employ that are supposed to be public servants. You know, uh, I am 1% at fault on this one, and I'll just admit that right up front. Um, it's 1% of really good stuff, though. So this is only 2 years ago. This one's more recent, and we're in our hometown of Salmon, Idaho, and there was horrible forest fires that year. So the Forest Service brought in extra help um, with all the forest fires, and one of the personnel they brought in, I'm going to nickname Shorty. I'd tell you his real name, but I don't remember it because the guy was super inconsequential. But he was a Forest Service cop. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, my wife's going, tell them how much money they waste with bringing in hundreds and hundreds of firefighters and blah, blah, blah. And they do, but that's not what this story's about. So my wife and I are sitting at the one of the no, I think it's the only traffic light in town. Salmon's very small. And you got to understand these small Rocky Mountain towns, people go out and cut wood in the summer or in the fall to heat their houses in the winter. And that's just what people do. And the ones that do a lot of it will have what they call a wood truck. And it's usually an old beat up truck with handmade sides that extend the bed upwards, so you can, you know, stack wood 8 feet deep in it. And they'll usually hang their chainsaw on a little chainsaw hanger on the outside of that wooden rack. And we are sitting at the traffic light, and on our right is one of these old wood trucks, and it's an old timer in Salmon. He's been there his whole life, and he's just out cutting his wood for the winter. He's not hurting anybody. And he makes a right-hand turn while we're sitting at a red light. Well, there's a U.S. Forest Service law enforcement truck behind him. And the truck flips on its lights to pull this old man over because they're going to check his wood cutting permits. Because, he's obviously a dangerous criminal at age 75 in a beat up $2,500 Chevy pickup with handmade stuff all over it. And so the old man pulls over, Forest Service cop zips in right behind him, and this Forest Service cop gets out. Now, he has to be a DEI hire because he's so short, he barely comes up to the side window, the door window of the pickup. He's got a beard and very, very short. I mean, he looked like he was maybe a 9-year-old kid or something, except he had a beard. And behind him, uh, the cop on in the other side of the Forest Service truck gets out. And so I'm going to call him Matt Dillon. And Matt Dillon walks behind the woodcutting truck, and he crosses his arms in front of him, and he spreads his legs. And I'm not exaggerating this. I mean, my wife's sitting right here. She'll verify it if anybody wants her to. And he's got a tactical holster for his pistol strapped to his leg. It's not on his waist, it's on his leg. And so Matt Dillon is standing guard over Shorty while Shorty writes the ticket. Well, this really pisses me off. Can you just leave people alone? This old guy's out cutting his firewood for the winter. Just leave him alone. I mean, that guy was retirement age probably when Shorty was born. I mean, can you leave the old folks alone, please? Let them live their country lifestyle. So our light turns green, and my wife's driving. I'm not. And so she sees me hit the window button. The window's rolling down. She goes, Tim, don't, like that. And I lean out the side of the truck, and I don't want to use words here that aren't appropriate for children because we get higher monetization if they can do ads for children on our videos. So I said a choice word to Shorty as we drove by. Well, I'm watching in my rearview mirror. Shorty just scrambles to get back in his Forest Service law enforcement truck. And it says law enforcement, USFS on it, big badge and all this other horse crap. And he's got the lights and everything. And Matt Dillon runs and jumps in the passenger side, and the chase is on, except we weren't running. It was a 35 zone. And by the time they got in their vehicle and could pull out, the traffic was pretty heavy because it was like 5:30 p.m. People were coming home from work, and this guy, I'm watching him, and he must have sped up to at least 80 miles an hour, and he's zigzagging in and out of traffic, passing cars to catch us. Well, I'm kind of like, this guy's endangering lives because I called him a choice name. And my wife goes, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Well, don't make it easy for him. When he pulls in behind us, if he ever does, because we're about to hit a 55 zone and then a 65 zone, um, just," I said, I mean, you're an ex-district attorney, just pull over. So the guy finally catches up to us, whips in behind us, got the lights going. He's very upset. Kim pulls over. So Shorty gets out of the car. And so does Matt Dillon, by the way. And so I'm watching Matt Dillon in my rear view mirror, and Matt Dillon's probably all of 21 or 22. And like I said, he's got his gun strapped to his leg in a tactical holster. And so Matt Dillon's covering Shorty, and Shorty comes up to my window. My window is still rolled down. He goes, "Your ID, please." And I said, "What for?" "I'm not the one driving. She's driving. Can't you see that?" And he goes, "For disturbing the peace, sir." And so I wanted to play with Shorty for a minute or two. He had no idea who he pulled over. And but my wife, being pissed off as can be at Shorty's behavior, writing an old guy a ticket, and then coming after us, endangering lives to catch us and pull us over. So she looks at him and she goes, "You don't even have jurisdiction here, short stuff." Because the guy barely came up midway past my door window on my Dodge truck. And and he gives her this funny look like, "Ooh, she knows what she's talking about." They're just so used to bullshitting people and bullying people and taking advantage of people because they're the feds. And so um, I hand Shorty my driver's license, and he goes, "What do you mean I don't have jurisdiction?" She goes, "I'm a criminal lawyer and a district attorney. You don't have jurisdiction on this highway." And he goes, "Uh-oh." I mean, you can just see it all over his face. So I hand him my ID, and I get my phone and start calling on my phone. He goes, "Who are you calling? You can't make a phone call right now." And I said, "Oh, I'm calling 911." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm calling 911 because Matt Dillon is standing back there with a tactical holster with his arms crossed in front of him and his legs spread. And you pulled me over on a false charge, and you're lying and making shit up, and you know it. So somebody's probably going to get shot here. So, in the interest of everybody's safety, I'm calling 911." So he's like, hands me my driver's license back, and he goes, "Have a good day, sir." And he starts strutting off to his law enforcement vehicle that you all are paying for with your taxes. The 911 operator answers, and she goes, "Hi, Tim, what's up?" It's a small town, it's a small county. They've got caller IDs on these, on the 911 lines and stuff. And, all the law enforcement knows me. I mean, I'm a butthead pillar of the community. I donate ammo to the sheriff's department. I love our local cops. when they're behaving. And most of the time they are. Most of the time they're a huge help in the county. We have good local county sheriff's deputies and fairly good police also in the city. Small towns are like that. Everybody kind of knows everybody. So the 911 operator picks up the phone and she goes, "Hi, Tim, what's up?" And I start telling her, what Shorty had just done. And she goes, "Oh, him again?" Like that. She goes, "The sheriff's standing right here. You want to talk to him?" So she hands the phone to the sheriff, and I told him what happened. He goes, "Tim, I have at least a half dozen complaints on this guy, and I was just putting a report together to send to DC, and get it to his district or office commander." He goes, "I'm making a paper trail here because there's a chance this guy is going to get hurt if he keeps this up in this county, and we don't want that to happen." And he said, "You want to just come in and talk to me?" And I said, "Sure, I'll be in a few minutes." So we turned around, went into the sheriff's department, and we got in there, and the sheriff hands me some paperwork. He goes, "This is a formal complaint form." He goes, "Or if you don't want to spend 10 minutes filling this stuff out," he goes, "just leave it in my hands." He goes, "I was just getting ready to file a complaint and ask for this guy to be removed from the community for his own safety." He goes, "So if you want, you can just leave it in my hands." So he didn't run for reelection. He wanted to retire, but Steve was as good a sheriff as I've ever had. Just a good guy, and most of these local guys are. They serve in the sheriff's department for 2 or 3, 4, 5, maybe more years, and then they run for sheriff. And most of them are locals that grew up there that we all know, and they know how country people live. We're simple people. We don't bother anybody, and we don't want to be bothered. So anyway, I had already planned in my mind to hunt down Shorty and confront him in public. Problem is, I'd be looking straight down. And like I said, obviously a DEI hire. They hire the handicapped and all kinds of stuff, which honestly, I'm all for hiring the handicapped, but they need to screen these guys mentally and emotionally before they hire them and give them a badge and a gun. Holy cow. So I never could find Shorty, and I couldn't find Matt Dillon either. Um, they got exported. and they're probably back in California now, doing what they do in California and getting away with it, or wherever he was brought in from. And it probably was California, or maybe Seattle or Portland or something like that. That's one comical story, and it would actually be comical if it wasn't so serious. But this is what's going on in your Forest Service and your BLM. And by the way, I don't know how many people know this. Last time I checked, the U.S. Forest Service had its own national SWAT teams. Yeah, SWAT teams for the U.S. Forest Service. And the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, also had its own national SWAT teams, plural teams. Folks, why are we allowing this garbage? Why are we allowing this? All they are is an enforcement arm of the federal government so they can take over when the time comes to take over. And they're already taking over, a little at a time by denying your rights to your own public lands and stuff. And, I have a friend that's a retired brain surgeon, a neurosurgeon, and he and I were going on a backpacking trip a couple, 3 years ago. And we were talking, we were getting ready to go. We were going to go up in the bitter roots along the Continental Divide and fish some of the high mountain lakes in Montana. And horrible fires go on somewhere up there every year because there's no forest management, there's no logging, there's no clearing. They just let everything grow out of control, and forest fires start, and it's really ugly. So there was some forest fires burning, and he goes, "Well, are we even allowed up there right now?" And I said, well, sure. I mean, I'm allowed up there. It's my forest. He goes, Tim, is there some kind of a restriction right now? And I said, not for me. And he goes, well, can we build campfires and cook trout and stuff? And I said, well, you saw my equipment list. I'm bringing fire starter and stuff. And a lightweight aluminum frying pan. I'm bringing all kinds of good seasonings for trout. So um, no one's going to stop me from building a fire and cooking my trout. I said, why do you ask? He goes, I'm trying to determine if it's legal right now. And I said, well, of course it's legal. These guys make up these stupid little rules, put them in the Federal Register as if they have authority to do so. And it technically, well, actually, untechnically becomes law, but it's not legal. I said, I'm going hiking, and I'm cooking trout on an open fire. And so um, it's kind of cool traveling with a brain surgeon for my physician, and then my wife, who's a high class criminal lawyer, for my attorney. I mean, it's cool. I got my bases covered in modern society. Um, anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and it's all true. And anyway, I love telling these stories. I got some way better ones. May God bless you, and I'll see you on the next video.